so let's jump into sort of our final thoughts of the season as a whole. Um, I was going to get into more specifics with some things. The way we're going to do this, just so we can mix it up so we're not sort of going over some of the same points in the same manner we did in our other videos, is we're going to kind of break this season down by categories. For instance, like plot, story, dialogue, characters, visuals, stuff like that. So we're gonna go through all those. We're gonna give our 0 to 10 rating on each of those categories. Um, we'll also give our 0 to 10 ranking on the entire season as a whole, and then we'll wrap it up and we'll see what we go from there. But yeah, let's just start out with um, let's give our overall take on the show rating wise. Kind of briefly talk about why we feel that way, and then we'll go into more of the specifics. So, who wants to lead us off?
You want to go?
I can. Okay. I can. Because mine's probably good. I'd say I thought mine might be the highest. I was going to give it an 8 out of 10. We'll dive more into specifics, but just overall, 8 out of 10. I mean, one of the better Disney Plus shows, especially from last year. So,
what drops at 2 points for you from a 10?
Well, I mean, like I said, I'll give you my specific 1 through 10s on some of the things. Characters. Some of the characters I was kind of underwhelmed with. The gods, especially, it's just kind of like we talk about. Some of them don't act like gods. Now, as far as the story, it's rare that you have a story that actually follows the book. We talked about that, and I think in the first video we did. But that for me is a 10 out of 10. Like that, I don't know that you could have got much better story. Yeah. There's just some things in it that take you out of it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Or that take me out of it. So that's what drops it. That's what drops it 2 points.
That's fair.
I still think it's a really good show. And I think if it had come out 10 years ago, I would have been all about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not gonna be far behind you. I kind of was flip flopping between like a 7 and a 6.5 to a 7, maybe a 7.5. So I guess I'll land sort of in the 7-ish range, just because I really enjoyed the first 4 episodes, because I felt like I was watching a show that was pretty faithful to the book. I was impressed with some of the one action sequence I think it's in the second episode where they do the capture the flag and everything, where he does the fight scene with Clarice and some of her cabin mates. That actually, I thought you could tell they done a lot of work on that, getting some of it right. But yeah, I would say, like you said, the story is probably about as close as they could have come to it. And I appreciated that about it compared to the book or to the movie. And I think at times the visuals were good. They felt like they nailed some of the locations pretty well. And obviously there were some scenes that they left out of the movie, like the arch in St. Louis, the water park in the one town in the middle of nowhere, and then some of those scenes that they leave out that was kind of cool to see those in there.
Yeah.
And I would say the reason, we're just being very brief, like you said, so we can kind of explain in detail in a minute, but the reason I would deduct the 3 points is characterizations of certain characters for sure was off. And we'll get into the whole topic of, book purists versus as good as it can get, kind of things like, are we too uptight if we expect everything to be exactly like the book, or so on and so forth. We'll talk about some of that in a minute too, um, but yeah, just characterizations of characters, especially in the middle episodes, like episodes 5 and 6. I felt like they made some pretty fun sequences in the book really bland, um, and uninteresting at times, which was disappointing. Um, and also just um, I don't know. I think it's mainly in the characterizations and in some of that as well. Some of the production design, like we talked about in our talking about the underworld, I feel like could have been more varied. But well, other than that, I mean, those are kind of my biggest ones. And we can kind of get into that some with our other stuff, our other topics. But
Sure. I'm gonna be probably like about actually in the middle of both y'all. I'll give it probably at least a 7.5, close to maybe an 8 like Drew. But
you knew mine had to be the lowest, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, pretty much. No, I was going between either a 7 or an 8, but then I was like, I'm gonna probably meet in the middle because I think it was like a 7.5 at least. But kind of like same thing. I guess my same issues were probably like as y'all's, like characters. I feel like the gods were kind of underwhelming when it came to at least Ares, like kind of like we talked about in episode 8. Just the fight scene just kind of felt anticlimactic. It didn't feel like he put up a fight really, and he's literally the god of war. So it's like that'd be something, I don't know. I feel like he would actually be able to beat the crap out of Percy, but it just didn't feel like that. Other than that, though, I think like they did a good job on like for characters wise, not the gods, but I think they did a good job of Percy, Annabeth, and Grover. I kind of enjoyed their characters, and I think they did good jobs for like the actor wise. I think the actors did a really good job for acting and portraying the characters as well. I think I liked that. And I love Lance Reddick, love him actor wise, love the dude. But I also am a very big Sean Bean fan, and as we all know, Sean Bean played Zeus in a movie.
It's hard to beat Sean Bean.
It is 100% hard to beat Sean Bean. So like honestly, I wouldn't really mind if they would have got Sean Bean on the show to play Zeus as well. I think that would have been kind of cool.
Well, so I saw some rumors that there was a lot of people, and even Logan Lerman himself was saying that, he played Percy in the movie. There was fans that were calling for him to play Poseidon in the show.
Oh, really?
Because he's about the right age now, I guess.
I mean, I wouldn't honestly complain about that because I like him as an actor too.
I like him
he does
too.
a really, really good job in a lot of his movies, especially like Fury. If you guys have seen that movie, did a really good job.
Fury's good. Yeah.
Very good job, and I just think he's a good actor. So honestly, I wouldn't have complained about that. I think that would have been a terrible idea. But
And I will say, going back to the movie, I don't think Logan Lerman was necessarily miscast to characterize Percy. I think he's way too old. But I think in terms of embodying the character, he almost fits it in some ways, sort of that misfit personality that Percy kind of has. He does a really good job of portraying that, but
not that the kid that got to play it is bad either.
No, not at all. I thought he was probably the best of the. I thought the guy it was Walker Scoble who played him in the show. I thought he was the best characterized probably of any of the characters probably.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Agreed. Yeah.
I guess that'll get us.
I guess we're getting into characters. But,
yeah.
I mean, I'm with y'all. The only ones that I say were a miss were some of the gods, and it's not because, again, it's not. I don't even think it's the actors that they got to play them. I think it's more about
it's in the writing,
right?
Yeah.
And then in Ares, after he fights Ares, he like starts glowing, and they're like, "Don't look at his true form," and I'm like,
"Yeah." Actually, in the books, though, did they? Is that like a thing that we can't look at?
Yeah, that's legit. Remember. Like whenever they go from their human form to their true form, if you look at them, it'll basically burn you up. So that is
still that part just felt awkward. That in the show, which I get, like we can get into story, in a minute, but it's hard to take something from a book and put it into a movie because you can't necessarily say everything you're saying in the book because a lot of that's happening in their head. You just kind of have to take it for what's coming out on their faces and stuff. So, but it's just they talk about the gods so highly, like the whole time, and then when it comes down to it, they're just like
They don't
they're
feel
not
very
portrayed as
godlike.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they're just not. They're just bunch of dudes.
And that's what I talked about a little bit in our last 2 episodes review, but it's one of those things where it's like, yes, in the book, they make a point to say, the gods like to resemble whatever culture they are dwelling in at the time, but anytime any of the main characters encounter them throughout the book, there's always this essence of, like, "Hey, if I say or do the wrong thing, these people are gonna burn me up," basically. Like, they're gonna
Mm-hmm.
smite me for saying the wrong thing. Now, not all the gods are like that. Like, I know in his interactions with, like, Hermes, for instance, Hermes is a lot more subdued, and he seems to be there just kinda enlisting Percy's help to help save Luke or whatever, but it's like, most of the time, anytime they're talking to any of the other gods, it's like, "Yeah, I better step right here, or this could go really bad for me." And you sort of they sort of have that aura around them that's like, "Hey, I'm a god, don't mess with me." So I get that, and I think they make them too human like in the show and try like
Mm-hmm.
to the point where it's hard to see them as a god, if that makes sense. There's no really great distinction there, um, other than maybe that they look like they're supposed to look in the book or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say in the characterization form, and I think this is something the movie didn't do well either. The one character that they cannot seem to get right for me in the movie and in the show is Grover's character. And I said this, I think, in an earlier video, and and I'm saying this kind of like what you were saying a minute ago. This is not a casting decision in terms of the actor himself, because in terms of his look and everything, it's fine. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that in his acting necessarily. I just think characterization wise, the way the character's written, they miss the essence of Grover's character because
He seems kind of wimpy in the book,
he's supposed to be
or
very
in
timid
the
and
TV
nervous
show.
all
I'm
the
sorry.
time. He's supposed to be, you know, um, he's supposed to have this sort of underlying wisdom because he's been around longer. He knows sort of Greek stuff. He knows a lot about the wild and nature and things like that. But because he's a satyr, but he's also just like really nervous all the time. Like I said, hesitant. He's very timid, and he's just he tries to avoid situations that are considering could be dangerous. And but at the same time, he's got this underlying bravery to him where it's like when his friends are put in danger, he jumps right in to help them. And
Yeah.
that sort of grows. He grows in that confidence throughout the books. And so in this show, it's just like he's the smartest one in the room. He's calm all the time. He's never nervous. He seems like he's got his life together, and it's just like it just feels like a totally different character.
Yeah.
And it's just like I don't understand why they can't write that character like that. Because that's sort of the great thing about his story arc is because every good story arc for a character has like they have serious flaws at the beginning of their story that they have to overcome
Mm-hmm.
throughout the whole arc. And his whole thing was I've got to overcome this fear of, you know, being put in danger from monsters or going into specific places that satyrs have been, seriously put in danger, like going, they go to recover the fleece, and that was always something for him that was, you know, fearful because they know there's a cyclops that's guarding the fleece, and so it's like all these different things. Going in the labyrinth was something that he feared to do because of, that was just one of those places that I'm trying to remember exactly why, but there's a reason why he doesn't want to go in there, but he does, and so that's kind of there's a great story arc to that, but where he's at now in the first season of this show, in terms of all the character flaws he has to overcome, they're not present, and so when you get down the line to the Sea of Monsters, when you get to the Battle of the Labyrinth, um, there's no arc in there that's satisfying for that character that really like any story arc for any character in any movie is supposed to be. Like for a character to be interesting, he has to start at one point and end up in a different point at the end of the movie. And so it's just that to me is just it baffles me that when you get the actual author of the book in there that they can't get that right. Um, because I mean, you look at a book like you look at an adaptation like the Harry Potter series where you actually had J.K. Rowling in there helping with those movies a lot, and you look at all the characters and you're like, man, they pretty much nailed all of those characters.
Mhm.
Like if you read the books, you're like, yeah, all these characters are pretty much exactly like they're supposed to be. Um, that's what I would expect when that writer is in the room, but maybe I'm expecting too much. I don't know. But that was kind of my biggest gripe on the characterization point.
That's fair. That is fair.
And like I said, nothing against the actor himself.
No, as far as the acting decisions, I think they were good.
He's just handed a script and told to
Yeah.
say the lines. So
Now, as far as the script itself, I think the story overall, again, I said, I don't know that you can get any closer to the book without taking it right out from the book. But again, hard to take writing from a book where you can explain people's thoughts and what they're feeling and all that stuff and put it to screen.
Yep.
And get the same understanding and effect out of it. But I think they did do a good job with the story as a whole.
Mhm.
Like they stayed true to the books, whereas the original Percy Jackson movie was just like they just did their own thing. Let's be honest. They didn't pay attention to the book at all.
Well, I would say where the movie did well for the most part was in the portrayal of the gods. I felt like was good in the movie. They all, had sort of a human look to them, but they also had this air of, that godlike air we talked about. So I feel like that was an aspect that they did good within the movie. From a characterization standpoint, like obviously the plot's completely different in the movie, but yeah, I mean, I think where I would land on like the characterization, I would give it like a 5 maybe, just because we talked things we talked about, where it's like the gods don't really act like they're supposed to. The Grover's character I feel like's off. I've heard people say with Annabeth's character that they think the reason she's more reserved and doesn't talk as much and she's more like, she only voices her thoughts when she feels like it is like because that's more like a child of Athena to do that. And it's like, I mean, I guess, but in the book, she's not really like you don't really look at her and go, oh wow, she's just like miles and miles different than other half bloods. She just like happens to be, um, a child of a different god, and so it's like, yeah, she's got different qualities that she's smarter at. That's why she's supposed to know all this Greek mythology and stuff because she reads all the time, and that's kind of That's kind of part of the thing, the wisdom aspect of her mother. So it's like I don't necessarily think her character all the time is the best characterized. So that's another thing for me. Like I said, that's also not an actress thing; it's just a writing thing. Um, but that's a minor one. It's not really as big a deal, I guess, as some of the other ones. But
Mhm.
so I'd say 5 out of 10. Plot, I would say probably a 9. I'd say they did about as well as they could do with it. I would have changed some things with some of the scenes they did, obviously to make them more exciting. But specifically, the water park scene and the casino scene are kind of boring to me. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, I'll give the story as well. Probably like an 8.5, 9 probably. I think the story was pretty well written. Character wise though, again, yeah, I kinda agree. I think maybe I'll give that like a 6.5, 6, maybe 7. Just for the gods and stuff. But I don't know, personally me, I think I don't know, I kinda enjoyed, but also like I don't really remember the books all that well. So like I guess I don't really remember how Grover was in the books. So for me, I enjoyed Grover's character. I thought he wasn't that bad. But I feel like if I were to go back and read the books, maybe I'd probably have more of an opinion on it like you do. But which I'm gonna probably end up doing that still. But yeah, I can character rating wise, I think probably a 7 would be 6.5 for me at least.
Yeah. So where do y'all land on like the visuals, how it looked? I mean, I'm kind of
Personally, I don't think it was like I don't think there was anything like too crazy about the visuals. I've seen. Oh, did we just lose Drew?
we lost him.
Damn.
Just continue, I guess, with your thoughts. Maybe he'll jump back
Okay.
in here in a second.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've seen way better shows with better visuals. I feel like that just like look visually stunning. Like I guess the Reigns of Power is one to say. I mean, the story was terrible, but the
Yeah.
visuals in that was very, very good. I mean, it was just stunning to like see the entire world and like how they did it. It was really well put together, I think, for visual wise. But they also had a ton of money to do it. I don't know how much budget they had for Percy Jackson here. I don't know if it was like a big budget or not, but that could be why the visuals for me at least weren't anything too crazy. But I don't think they're necessarily terrible. I think they did a decent job at it.
So I was just looking at that earlier. They were saying it cost about as much per episode as it did to do The Mandalorian, which is anywhere from 12 to 15 million an episode. So we're looking at like probably close to 90 million
Yeah.
total, which it's going to be more than that with like all your production costs
Yeah.
and all that stuff.
For sure.
I would imagine easily over 100 million, probably closer to like 120, which kind of makes you wonder where all the visuals go to.
Yeah.
And this is probably there he is. This is probably more of a general critique of Disney Plus shows in general.
Mhm.
But it doesn't matter what you're watching these days, whether it's a Percy Jackson or a Marvel show or some of the Star Wars shows, I'd say with the exception of like Andor, which Andor looks completely different from any of the other Star Wars shows,
Yeah.
visually. I would say a lot of times their stuff just looks cheap.
Mhm.
And you wonder when their budgets are in excess of 100 million, how it can possibly look that way,
Yeah.
Um, but I think my biggest gripe is kind of what I've heard other people make this complaint is it's clear that they filmed large portions of this in the volume, and we're all familiar with the volume because that's that was sort of the big thing that came out when that they used with the first season of The Mandalorian. It was when they introduced the technology,
Yeah.
but it's essentially just a big dome that they can project images onto the wall
Mhm.
of it, and they can make all their sets in there for cheaper, project their images,
Yeah.
and film basically entire episodes.
Mhm.
And I think what that has done to the Hollywood industry in general, and especially Disney stuff, because I know they've used that volume on movies like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. They used it
Yeah, they
on,
used a big time in that. I'm pretty sure.
yeah.
I think the entire movie was
And
like that.
so I think unfortunately what that's doing is it's crippling the visual department to some degree
Mhm.
because the biggest issue that the volume has is it is very confined. So you can only do all that you can do in that small domed circular area.
Mhm.
And the problem that you come across with that is when you're watching a show, you can tell when they're using the volume because there's always a circular set of some
Mhm.
kind. I think the most blatant example is in the season finale of Ahsoka when they are trying to get to the top of the big temple thing, and Thrawn's about to take off in his Star Destroyer, and they're on that little platform that's like a big circle, and they're
Mhm.
fighting off the stormtroopers and everything. Like, it's clear that's in the volume because of the shape of the floor and the
Yeah.
set, and it's a certain size. It's big enough to where you can move around, but it's not big enough to where you can do a lot with it.
Mhm.
And so, it's stuff like that. It's like I think a scene you can definitely tell they used it in is in the fifth episode of Percy Jackson where they go to the water park and they go inside the ride
Yeah.
and with the statue, and it's just like a big circular room.
Mhm.
It's like, yeah, they're in the volume there. And or at least it looks like it more than likely is.
Yeah.
And so it's just stuff like that where it's like I just feel like the volume just limits the visuals of a show so much,
Yeah.
and it I that's why I love like filming on location and
Yeah.
like the scenes where they go to like the Garden Gnome Emporium, where you can tell they're filming outdoors.
Mhm.
Um, just things like that, where it's like, yeah, go and film on location as much as humanly possible because it feels realistic. And so I think that's kind of where I'm at with that. I don't think it was egregious in this show. I just think there's some scenes where it feels very limited. I think the fight on the beach in the finale is probably filmed inside the volume because the surrounding stuff doesn't look real. It
Mhm.
doesn't look that real to me. And everything just kind of happens in a tight area. There's not a lot of space to it,
Yeah.
so um, it's just I don't know. I just feel like it restricts everything, and I think that's a problem that a lot of their. I mean, the Kenobi show used it. The Book of Boba Fett used it.
Mhm.
We talked about Ant-Man using it. Like all their stuff, and it's because it's really cheap, but it's also cheapens the product too. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at with the visuals. I would still give them
Yeah.
like a 7 or an 8, but
Yeah. I'd say more of like a 6 for me, I think, visual wise. But I just kind of wish, like, in general, shows and movies get back to like kind of like how like Lord of the Rings was. Like, Lord of the Rings was like visually stunning, and a lot of that stuff was actually shot on site in like different locations and stuff like that. Was in New Zealand, I think, was a lot of the film was filmed in. I think all of it was actually, wasn't it?
a
Most of it.
good chunk of it,
Yeah.
yeah, the
And
majority of it.
so I don't know, I kind of miss that like aspect of like movies and stuff, like where they actually go out and film in locations and not like use CGI and special effects. And that's just mostly what all movies and shows are nowadays. Is that
Well, and it's sad too when you can watch a movie from like a decade ago and it looks better visually than like
100%?
stuff you see
Well,
today.
again, Lord of the Rings, dude. Like Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings, I think is like one of the most like visually stunning movies, and even the show. Like I think the show, I hate the show. I don't think it was a good show, but like visually, that show was really really good.
Yeah, for the most
So
part, yeah.
I think, I mean, y'all are saying basically my thoughts on it. I think there's some good parts visually. I think it's maybe one of the weaker points of the show. Um,
mhm.
well, we talked about the underworld in our last, section video. Had just was just kind of the underworld. It is what it is. You know what I mean?
Land,
There was
yeah.
nothing really stunning about it in any way. When I think that it could have been, Olympus looked pretty good. I didn't have a problem with that per se. I
Yeah,
think it
no, that's
looked
fair.
pretty good.
I agree with
Another
that. I think
scene
Olympus
filmed in
did.
the volume was the throne room. Clearly, it was a big
Mhm.
circle.
Yeah, but and then the camp itself, I like camp the way it looks. I think I like it better than the Percy Jackson movie. I think it fits the book better. Um,
They don't show the camp much in the movie. In any, that's something I
right.
feel like they should explore a lot more in depth. Is really just go into like show all the cabins and what they look like, and
Mhm.
give us feel immersed. Like when you go, like when you watch a Harry Potter movie and you go into the different like houses and stuff, you get a
Yeah.
different feel to the tones of it and everything. I
I
don't know.
think I think my visual score is probably a 7, 6.5, 7.
Okay. Yeah, that's
So I
fair.
guess the final question is: does it feel like a Percy Jackson show? Does the world that they create feel like it's supposed to? And I would say, for the most part, yes. I feel like there's always that fine line with those because they are set in like modern times. I mean, the books were started writing them, I guess, in the mid 2000s, and then obviously he was writing them, I guess, into the early 2010s or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but I feel like they, all the monsters look pretty good. They feel like they could be out of, you know, a Percy Jackson book. The one that always kind of cracked me up a little bit is, and I actually enjoyed this episode, but I think it's episode 4 where they go to the St. Louis to the Arch, and they
Mhm.
meet Echidna, which is like the mother of all monsters. And I
Mhm.
was like, yeah, when she shows up, she's supposed to appear as like a normal person. That's kind of the whole point. And then as she talks to him, they realize, oh, snap, she's actually pretty bad news. And I thought the actress getting the demeanor of the character was actually really good. I think the part that just kind of got me was where they're running to the arch and she's like walking towards them across the grass and she's just looks like like a soccer mom, walking across. It's like that would have been menacing if she's not wearing the clothes that like my mom would have wore when she was taking me to practice, sort of thing. And it's like it would have been cool if she would have like transformed into her true form or something and sort of revealed herself or whatever. But I don't think she actually does in the book, so maybe that's why they were going for that. But I don't know. It's one of those things that kind of made me kind of crack up a little bit because I was like, I mean, that's fine, I guess, but it's just kind of funny.
Mhm.
And I mean, I think there were aspects of the movie that did a better job of capturing the feel. For instance, I think the sequence in like the Garden Gnome Emporium in the movie is pretty well done because they go in and they're seeing all the statues and they're kind of like, oh, this statue looks sort of realistic. This looks like my Uncle Ferdinand. It's like, oh, it is my Uncle Ferdinand. And then this woman shows up and she's like, you got to get out of here. She'll find you or whatever. And I thought they did a good job of ramping up the tension more in that,
Mhm.
maybe. And then obviously that sequence is pretty fun. But like I said before too, I think the hotel, the Lotus Hotel and Casino, is better executed in the movie than it is in the show. I said minus all the characters like gambling and stuff, obviously, but because 12-year-olds aren't doing that in the book. Um, but I just think this idea of we walk into this casino and we don't realize that it's sucking time away from us. Where in the show they walk in and they're like, oh yeah, we can't stay in here long because this will take time away from us. It's like, yeah,
Mhm.
they don't know that when they walk in the book. That's kind of
Mhm.
part of the whole like, oh snap, we just wasted 3 days in this casino and we only had like 7 days to finish our quest. So it's like, yeah, I think that part of like explaining everything, we know the answer to all these places we go into, just takes the tension away from it. But um, yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, it feels sometimes it's a mixture between it. You just feel like you're watching some modern day show, and then the next instant you feel like you're watching a Percy Jackson show. So it's just kind
Mhm.
of sometimes it doesn't blend the two very well, I guess.
No. I feel like I can't really have much of an opinion on it because I don't really, again, remember a whole lot from the book. So I guess I can't really necessarily say it feels like Percy Jackson show because I don't remember a ton from the books. But for the most part, I guess it does. I'm just gonna keep it short and simple on that for me, at least.
The biggest thing for me is I like the what's the word I'm looking for? I like what the show has created, if that makes sense. I like where it's at. Um, I think, like we've talked about, there's definitely going to be a season two, at least a season two. So I like where the show is at. And as far as the world it's created, because I think it's sustainable.
Yeah.
Like there was what, Johnny, 7 books?
There's 5 in the original
Yeah,
series.
five,
Yeah.
five. But so could his last 5 seasons, I think they've made the world in a way that it could, if that makes sense.
I
They've
think
made it
they
immersive
do
enough.
and yeah, they kind of it's almost like a to borrow another example, it's almost like a The Force Awakens kind of comparison where it's like they don't necessarily do anything spectacular, but they set up pretty well for what could come after. Now, that was obviously a train wreck what happened
Yeah, I was
after
gonna say,
that,
let's hopefully it's not gonna be
Right.
like
but it's like it's that thing where it's like, yeah, it wasn't really great, but it didn't destroy anything. So it's like you're kind of just fine going forward. And I think that's where they're at with this one, where it's like, yeah, they set it up fine to where you can sort of propel forward. But I think the struggle now is you have to heighten the stakes from this point forward, and you
Mhm.
have to ramp things up in the tone, more serious. Um, and I think something that this season lacked a lot of times, and this is a comment I made, I think in the first video we did, was there's always this sort of epic feel to the story. The different moments that happen, you just feel like, oh man, that was pretty epic. Even reading it. And so I feel like there's just a lot of scenes in this one that just didn't feel as epic as they could have. They didn't feel like they were taking you on some grand adventure all the time. And I think like this fight with Ares should have been more epic. The water park scene was a lot more epic in the book. I think
Which
the only one that really maybe captures that for me is the one he's thrown off the arch and it's like he's falling. I mean, that's pretty. They do it. That's probably maybe the best episode of the show. It's one of the better episodes because it feels the most like it should.
Mm.
Yeah, just
well,
stuff like
and
that.
I'm okay. All that to say, I'm okay with season 1 being this way as long as
They
there's
stepped up.
more epic stuff to come. Does
Mhm.
that make
Yeah.
sense?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like,
And
if
then the
this was
second book's got some pretty epic scenes in it.
right,
Like you've got to
Yeah.
take it up, and I mean, you look at they're on the Sea of Monsters. They're you know, Clarice is blasting monsters with a big steamship from like the Civil War, and it's like all these sort of crazy, cool sequences, and they're fighting the Cyclops, and there's gonna be a lot of stuff they're gonna have to bring their A game to really pull off. And I mean, the mechanical bulls that attack the camp, like at the very beginning,
yep.
Mhm.
it's got a lot in it, and that's gonna take more than what they did in this season to really pull that off. I think.
Which and like I said, I'm totally okay with season 1 starting off slow as long as they pick it up
No.
Yeah.
at some point. And I think this has the chance to do that
Mhm.
more than I have more confidence in this than most of the Disney Plus shows, I would say.
Well, I think personally though, I think like that's kind of like how shows work though. Like season one's usually kind of the build up for more stuff, like more like I guess epic stuff to come. At least for me, at least I don't know. I just think season one's more of like a build up to the characters, stuff like that. And so like season two will be more of like action packed type deal or story driven stuff like that. So I think that's kind of to me at least that's a lot of shows kind of what they do. So I think they probably will do that. Hopefully, I mean, I would think they would. At least they know they got to probably step up their A game for the next season, make it better than the first. I mean, I think that's what every industry should strive to do, at least. So
Well, I don't know if it's going to be next year that it comes out. I would say, well, I guess it'll be. I don't think it'll be this year. I'll put it that way.
no, it'd probably be
Since
2025.
we
If anything.
ended this season early 2024, so
Well, especially since they haven't confirmed season two, I don't think we'll get season two this year. It'll for sure.
Yeah,
be
it'd probably be 25.
more towards the end of next year, possibly, or middle of next year.
but if we get it, I guess we will see what they can do with the second one because the scenes only get more epic as the books go on. So they're definitely going to have to. I mean, if you think about where they have to get in like the Titan's Curse and like the Battle of the Labyrinth, some of the stuff that happens in those, it's like, yeah, you got to crank it up several notches.
For sure.
So we'll see if they can pull that off, and we'll stay cautiously optimistic. We'll put it that way.